Hello everyone and welcome back to Great Broadway Fans YouTube channel. I'm Luke and today I am bringing you another movie review. I had the good fortune this weekend of seeing two movies in theaters, and the first one that I saw was The Finest Hours. And for those of you who don't know what The Finest Hours is, it is a movie based on a true story about one of the most daring rescues in Coast Guard history. Basically, this huge oil freighter breaks in half off of the coast of Massachusetts, and this group of four get in this small speedboat and travel as fast as they can through hurricane-like weather to get to save these men that are on this stern section of this floating oil tanker. And here's what I have to say about the movie. I went to go see it with my father and my grandmother. My father is a fisherman, and he's been at sea all his life. And all three of us actually love movies that are based on true stories. But if I had to describe The Finest Hours in one sentence, I would say that it's a mixed bag. And let me get my notes here. I completely understand why it has a 59% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, because as I just said, it's a mixed bag. While I did find all of the scenes that are set at sea were visually stunning, some of the most gorgeous scenes I've ever seen in my entire life in a film. I have never had my breath taken away more by a film than I have ever in my life than with The Finest Hours. I would say in terms of comparison for other films set at sea, the closest one I can think of is Titanic, and while those two are definitely very different films, they are visually stunning film productions set at sea. But the reason why it's a mixed bag is I'll get to it in a second. But let's talk about the good things. As I just mentioned, visual effects absolutely will take your breath away. The way that they have created the storm-like weather is incredible. It's so realistic that you can't even tell that it's computer generated. The ships are so, well, the stern section of this oil freighter that is floating adrift is completely realistic to behold. There's this brilliant scene where basically what happens is in the stern section of the ship there's this huge crack, and then they're at sea, it's horrible weather, it's a bad storm, and then it bursts open, and Casey Affleck's character sends one of the crew members to go tell the bridge that they are taking on water, and he's walking on the top deck, and all of a sudden he stops, and the camera pulls back, and it shows you it's completely split in two, as if you had cut it in half with a knife. And the bow section completely capsizes and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. And this stern section is floating adrift with 32 people on it, mind you, and they are trying to keep it afloat. And that is some of the most beautiful cinematography I've ever seen. I know it's all fake, I know it's all CGI and rendered, but you cannot tell. You seriously cannot tell. Now, let me talk about the stuff that was not so great. I would say that the acting in this movie, although the cast is completely dedicated to it, everybody falls flat in their own certain areas. Chris Pine plays a very wishy-washy character. He's, at the beginning of the movie, I will say, even if you are bored out of your mind within the first 20 minutes, stay on board. That pun was not intended. Because the first 15 to 20 minutes, I will say, are a slog to get through. We have a lot of exposition before we get to our inciting incident. And Chris Pine plays this very weird, sheepish character when he's with Holiday Granger, when he's with Eric Bana, when he's with Ben Foster. But then when he gets on the boat and is traveling to the ship that's in distress, it's as if he's flipped a light switch. And the character arc doesn't come natural, and it felt very jarring and a drastic change in my opinion. Although I do really like Chris Pine. I know that people say he's box office poison, but I loved him in Star Trek. I thought he was amazing in Into the Woods, and he's good in this movie, but he's just not there. Ben Foster's character, I felt was horribly unlikable. I just did not like his performance. I can see why he was not included in the marketing for this movie. He's in it so little, and his character is just all over the place. Casey Affleck, he did good, but he wasn't great. His performance left me just wanting more. You can tell that he's that old, crusty, like, been at sea his whole life, and he's a curmudgeon, and he's very stubborn, but he's still dedicated to the ship and keeping everybody alive and keeping everybody safe until rescue comes. But his performance just left me wanting more. That's pretty much all I can say about him. I thought Eric Bana was the worst in this entire movie. He plays like this big boss general type of character that comes to the Coast Guard and starts barking out orders, and his character was so awful. It was really a shame because I do like Eric Bana, but terrible, terrible performance. And the last person I want to talk about is Holliday Grainger. I adored her in Bonnie and Clyde. If you did not see the mini-series on the History Channel, go watch it because she plays Bonnie Parker amazing. And she's British, and she completely pulls off an American accent brilliantly in both Bonnie and Clyde and in this movie. And then, of course, she was in Disney's live-action remake of Cinderella, and she played one of the stepsisters. And while I felt that her performance was brilliant, and she was very committed to her performance, her character was so poorly written. And I felt that the movie kind of shoehorned her in as being the only main female character in a movie that is predominantly male in terms of its cast size. Holliday Grainger serves as one of the only female characters in the movie. And it was just, it fell flat. Like I said, committed, great performance, but her character was shoehorned into the plot. I felt that she was only there as merely as an obstacle for, like, I'm a strong, independent woman, and I am not going to listen to these men intimidate me, and I'm going to get my boyfriend back. And while I felt that that was admirable, it just was, it didn't come natural. I felt that the screenplay, now looking back at it, the screenplay was the weakest part of this entire movie. And I will say this, and I really hate to say this, but every single time the movie cuts to a scene that's on the mainland, I was bored out of my mind. And then every time that we would cut back to a scene that's set at sea, I was on the edge of my seat, blown away, waiting for what was coming next. And it was so weird. The movie kept going back and forth and back and forth, and that's why I call it a mixed bag. I will end on a positive note. If you are a fan of Chris Pine, if you are a fan of movies that are set at sea, and if you are a fan of movies that are based on true stories, I would see The Finest Hours. It's a very well done movie on the production side. I felt that the screenplay was weak, the performances were wishy-washy, but overall the movie is visually stunning to behold. And I really, really do hope that it gets some better box office traction. It hasn't been doing well at the box office, but I can see why, because the movie is not perfect. It's okay, but it's not quite there. Alright, so thank you so much for watching my review of The Finest Hours. Leave down in the comments below if you saw the movie, what did you think about it? As always, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, follow me on all 4 of my social media websites, links to those are in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.